The universe was silent that night. The kind of silence that only space could hold. Vast, cold, and endless. On the frozen moon of Lither 9, a human engineer named Eli Turner worked alone inside a research outpost. The place was small, built from metal panels and humming machines. The stars outside looked like tiny pinholes in a black curtain. Eli had been stationed there for almost 8 months. His job was simple but lonely. Maintain the communication towers that connected the colony ships orbiting above with the mining stations below. Most days he spoke to no one except the artificial intelligence that monitored the weather and equipment. That night, as the wind outside howled like a living creature, Eli sat by his terminal, sipping recycled coffee that tasted like metal. He was checking routine data when a strange sound cut through the static. A soft, broken voice coming from his long-range receiver. "Help. Please. Anyone. Help me." He straightened in his chair. "This is Outpost 17, Human Sector. Identify yourself," he said quickly, adjusting the frequency. The voice came again, clearer this time. It was not human. The tone was delicate but trembling, like someone trying not to cry. "It's my mating season. Please help me," Eli froze. The translator processed the alien words and produced that strange sentence. He frowned. It sounded like a biological emergency, not what it first appeared to be. He responded carefully. "You're injured? Or your system is failing?" A faint reply came. "Both. My ship crashed. I can't regulate. Body heat, please." Eli leaned over the console, scanning the signal. It was weak, coming from 15 kilometers northeast of his outpost, deep in the frozen valley known as Sector D4. Temperatures there dropped to minus 100 degrees at night. No human could survive there without heavy gear, and most alien species couldn't either. He hesitated for a moment. It could be a trap. Pirates sometimes used fake distress calls. But something in the voice felt real. Desperation didn't need translation. He grabbed his thermal suit and emergency kit. "AI, log my coordinates and open the south hangar." "I'm taking the rover," the AI's calm voice replied. "Warning, Commander Turner. The valley is unstable. Ion storm activity is increasing." "I know," Eli said, sliding his helmet on. "But someone out there won't make it through the night." The hangar door opened with a hiss and the icy wind hit him like a wall. He climbed into the small transport rover, switched on the heat generator, and drove into the storm. The ride was rough. The ground cracked beneath the rover's treads as the wind blew waves of frozen dust across the headlights. Eli focused on the scanner display, following the faint signal that kept flickering like a heartbeat. After an hour of driving, he finally saw it. A small ship half buried in the ice, smoke rising from its damaged thrusters. The outer hull shimmered with silver-blue scales unlike any human-made metal. He stopped the rover, grabbed his flashlight, and approached carefully. The air around the ship was colder than any he'd felt before. The crash had formed a crater, and inside it he saw a narrow crack where dim blue light flickered. He stepped closer, pried open the outer hatch, and entered. Inside the wreck, sparks danced from broken panels. The air was thin, freezing, and smelled faintly of ozone. Then he heard it again. That soft voice, weaker now. "Please, help." He turned his flashlight and saw her. A tall, slender figure sat against the wall, wrapped in torn silver cloth. Her skin glowed faintly like the surface of a pearl. Her eyes, large and glowing gold, blinked slowly at him. She wasn't human, but she looked close enough to understand fear and pain. Eli dropped to one knee beside her. "Hey, don't move. I'm here to help." She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "You're human?" "Yes," he said, opening his thermal pack. "Engineer from Outpost 17. Your ship's dead, but we can get you to safety." She shivered violently. "I can't. My cycle. My body temperature. I'll lose consciousness soon." Eli didn't fully understand, but it didn't matter. He took off his heat pad and wrapped it around her arms. "This will keep you warm for now." Her eyes softened. "You shouldn't touch me. My species." "I'm not worried about that," Eli said. "You're freezing. Let's get you out of here." He lifted her gently, she was lighter than she looked, and carried her toward the rover. Every step through the ice felt heavier as the storm grew stronger. By the time he reached the vehicle, his visor was coated with frost. He placed her in the passenger seat, adjusted the heater to maximum, and fastened the restraints. "Hang in there," We'll be home soon. She looked at him weakly. Why, are you helping me? Humans and Alarians? We are not allies. Eli started the engine. Out here, it doesn't matter who's allied with who. You called for help. That's enough. For a moment, she said nothing. Then her eyes closed and her breathing steadied under the warmth. The drive back was harder. The storm nearly blinded the sensors and the rover shook with every gust. But Eli kept going. Every few minutes, he glanced at her, making sure she was still breathing. She looked peaceful now, almost asleep, though faint light pulsed under her skin like slow-moving fire. He spoke quietly, half to himself. You're going to be fine. I've got you. When he finally reached the outpost, the wind had died down. He carried her inside and placed her on the medical cot near the heater. The AI scanned her immediately. Species identified, Illyrian. Warning, body temperature unstable. Suggest environmental adjustment to 41 degrees Celsius. Eli adjusted the thermal regulators. Warm air filled the small room. The alien woman's breathing evened out and color returned to her skin. After several minutes, her eyes opened again. She looked around, dazed. Where am I? You're safe, Eli said softly. Outpost 17. I'm Eli Turner. She studied him, her golden eyes filled with confusion. I didn't think humans still stayed on these moons. I thought you all left after the wars. Eli smiled faintly. Some of us stayed. Someone has to keep the towers running. She seemed to relax slightly. I'm Lyra of the Illyrian Science Fleet. He nodded. Nice to meet you, Lyra. You had a rough landing. She looked away, embarrassed. My ship's power core failed. I was trying to reach my planet before the cycle completes. My body depends on thermal balance, I noticed, Eli said. Don't worry. We'll fix your ship once the storm clears. Lyra tilted her head, surprised. You would help, even knowing what I am? Eli shrugged. Doesn't matter to me. You're alive. That's enough reason. For the first time, a small smile touched her lips. A rare, uncertain gesture. Hours passed. Eli checked her readings and made sure the environment stayed warm enough. Lyra watched him work, her expression a mix of curiosity and disbelief. You risked your life in the storm, she said quietly. Most humans would not have done that. Eli looked up from the monitor. Maybe most wouldn't. But I couldn't just sit here and listen to someone die. She studied him for a moment longer, then closed her eyes again. Perhaps your kind has changed since the wars? Or maybe you're different, Eli didn't answer. He looked out the window where snow still drifted across the empty plain. He felt something strange, not fear or suspicion, but a quiet sense of connection. Two beings from different worlds, trapped by the same cold. He sat back in his chair, watching her sleep under the soft orange glow of the heater. The AI beeped softly, confirming her vitals were stabilizing. Eli let out a long breath. You'll make it, Lyra, he whispered. We'll figure this out together. Outside the storm raged on, but inside the tiny outpost warmth returned. And somewhere deep inside, Eli knew this was only the beginning. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the icy plains of Lithar 9 glistening under the weak twin suns. Eli Turner stood by the large viewport of Outpost 17, his eyes scanning the horizon. Snow crusted over the distant valleys, and the faint shimmer of a half-buried ship caught his attention. Lyra stirred on the medical cot behind him, her golden eyes blinking open. Her skin glowed faintly in the warmth of the room, reflecting the delicate blue and silver lights of the outpost. She had regained enough strength to sit up, though her movements were careful and deliberate. I feel stronger, she said quietly, stretching her slender arms. Your warmth. It helps my body regulate, Eli smiled. Good. That means we've bought some time. Her gaze wandered around the room. This place, humans still live here? Yes, a few of us. Most prefer ships or colonies closer to the core worlds, but someone has to maintain these outposts. Eli paused, then asked gently, Lyra, your cycle, how soon before it becomes dangerous? She hesitated. It is progressing faster than expected. If I do not reach a controlled environment soon, my body will begin shutting down systems. Death is possible. Her voice faltered, though it was calm. Eli's mind raced. He had to repair her ship, yes, but she needed safety and stability first. We'll fix your ship, he promised. But first you need to rest, and I need to study your physiology a little. I need to understand how to keep you safe. Lyra tilted her head. You want to study me? I need to know how your system works. I don't want to make a mistake that could hurt you, Eli explained. She considered him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I have no choice. But be careful. Humans often misunderstand Illyrians. Eli began with simple checks: temperature, pulse, skin conductivity. Lyra's body glowed faintly as energy flowed through her veins, and the readings were unlike anything he had seen. Her thermal regulation fluctuated rapidly, and subtle tremors ran through her arms and legs. Your body, it's incredible, he murmured, noting how her metabolism seemed linked to emotional and environmental conditions. You can survive extreme cold, but only for a short period before your system fails. She watched him quietly. You are the first human who does not fear my biology. Eli shrugged, focused on the data. I don't see fear. I see someone in need. That's enough reason to help. Lyra blinked, unprepared for the simplicity of his answer. Humans often overcomplicated loyalty, but Eli's actions spoke louder than words. Slowly, she allowed herself to relax into the warmth, the blue light of the medical console reflecting in her luminous eyes. For the next few hours, Eli worked on her ship remotely. The wreck was buried beneath ice and debris, and he used his rover's arm to clear the bulk of the frozen rubble. Lyra watched, fascinated. You are resourceful, she said. I have seen few who can repair this technology without full access to the ship's systems. Eli chuckled. Improvisation is my specialty. You humans might call it luck. I call it problem solving. She tilted her head, studying him. You are curious. Most humans are not. I have to be. Otherwise, I'd be bored out of my mind. He gave her a half smile. And bored engineers make mistakes. A soft silence fell between them. Lyra's breathing deepened, and Eli noticed that her body temperature seemed to stabilize under the controlled warmth. You are unlike any human I imagine, she admitted. Your warmth, not just your heat. Your attitude, it is comforting. Eli looked up, meeting her eyes. Comfort comes from understanding. You're scared, stranded, alone. Anyone would feel that way. Humans are Illyrian. She paused, then whispered, I have always been told that humans are selfish, that we cannot trust you with life or duty. Eli shook his head. Not all humans. And trust is earned by actions, not words. Right now, I trust you to stay alive. The conversation seemed to ease something inside her. For the first time, she allowed a small smile, hesitant but genuine. Perhaps your kind can be different than I believed. By afternoon, Eli had managed to patch the core systems of her ship temporarily. It would not sustain long interstellar travel yet, but it could survive enough to reach a controlled environment on her home planet or a nearby safe station. Lyra stood beside him, watching. You could leave me here, she said softly. You could ignore my ship and return to your routines. Most would, Eli shook his head. I didn't bring you here to leave you to die. That's not how I work. You need help. That's all that matters. Her golden eyes glimmered with gratitude. You truly value life, not as a resource, not as a task, but as a gift. Eli felt a flicker of pride, not for himself, but for the trust she had given him. I guess I do. The hours passed quickly, filled with shared curiosity. Lyra explained aspects of her species' biology, the binding cycle, how emotional states influenced physiology, and why leaving a safe environment was dangerous during this period. She spoke carefully, as if revealing her species' secrets was a delicate matter. You humans are strange, she said finally, but not entirely unpleasant. Eli laughed softly. I'll take that as a compliment. They shared a quiet moment, watching the frozen plains outside. Despite their differences, a connection had begun, born of trust, danger, and shared survival. As evening approached, a new challenge arose. Sensors picked up a faint tremor in the valley, a small seismic shift caused by the storm's aftermath. The outpost shuddered, and snow fell from the ceiling in tiny drifts. Eli's heart raced. You'll be safe inside, he reassured Lyra. But we may need to move equipment if the quake worsens. Lyra nodded, understanding the urgency. Your concern, it is rare among strangers. Eli smiled faintly, not a stranger anymore. The quake passed with minimal damage, but it reminded Eli how fragile life could be on this icy world. Lyra's reliance on warmth and stability made her even more vulnerable than any human. Her species' remarkable physiology was a marvel, but it came with delicate limitations. Later, Eli prepared a small meal. Lyra watched curiously as he worked, noting the simplicity and functionality of human food. He handed her a nutrient bar, engineered to survive long space travel. "Do humans always eat like this?" she asked, her voice almost amused. "Not always," Eli said, "but it works in emergencies. And emergencies are what brought you here." She took the bar delicately, tasting it with cautious interest. "It is acceptable." She paused, then asked quietly, "Why do you care so much?" "You risked life and limb for someone you barely know." Eli leaned back, considering her question. "Because life matters. Because helping others is the right thing to do. That's not unique to humans, but it is something we strive for. And you are worth the effort." Lyra looked down at the food in her hands, her mind processing not just his words but the actions that accompanied them. Trust, care, patience. These were foreign to her, yet undeniable. Night fell over the outpost, the twin moons casting soft light over the ice fields. Lyra rested in the warmth of the med bay, and Eli stayed by the console monitoring her vitals. He could see the subtle pulses of her energy, the faint glow that marked her life force. He thought about the weeks to come. The ship needed full repairs. The storm had caused minor damage to the outpost, and her cycle would continue to progress. But he also knew something else, a bond had formed. Two beings from entirely different worlds, relying on each other to survive. Lyra stirred slightly and opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "I did not expect to find such trust among humans. You found it," Eli said simply, "and you're not going back alone." For the first time in her life, she felt a strange comfort, not just physical warmth, but the emotional reassurance that she was not entirely alone in the universe. The night stretched on. Outside, the winds of Lithar 9 whispered across the ice plains. Inside, two beings, human and Illyrian, began learning how to survive, together. Eli knew that the real challenge was yet to come. Fixing the ship, surviving the next storms, and helping her through the cycle would test them both. But for now, he allowed himself to appreciate the small victories, warmth, trust, and the beginning of an unexpected friendship. And somewhere deep in the med bay, Lyra began to hope that perhaps humanity was not as selfish or cold as her people had always believed. The calm of the outpost did not last long. Eli Turner had barely finished securing Lyra's temporary shelter when the sensors started beeping urgently. Outside, dark clouds churned across the sky, thick with ionized particles. The storm from the previous day had returned, stronger and more unpredictable. Eli's heart sank. He looked at Lyra, who was sitting upright on the medical cot, her golden eyes narrowing as she felt the change in the air. Her body glowed faintly, a warning pulse running through her veins. "The storm, it will disrupt my system," she whispered. "I cannot remain stable for long in this environment." Eli nodded. "Then we move. Now." He grabbed his emergency kit and prepared the rover. Lyra stood, steady but delicate, her glowing skin pulsating with an unusual rhythm as she struggled to maintain her body temperature. She relied entirely on warmth and stability, and the storm threatened to undo everything Eli had done to help her. "Hold on," he said as he helped her into the rover. The seat was small, but he adjusted the heat regulators to maximum. "We'll get your ship fixed, I promise." The ride was brutal. Winds howled, flinging ice shards like arrows, and the visibility dropped to almost zero. Eli maneuvered the rover carefully over the jagged terrain, his hands tight on the controls. Every gust threatened to tip them over, but his focus never wavered. "You humans are fearless," Lyra said, her voice trembling slightly. "Most would stay inside and wait, but you risk everything for a stranger." Eli glanced at her. "It's not risk if you care. And I do care, and for your life." Her eyes softened, but she did not speak again. Her breathing grew shallow as her body fought to maintain warmth and stability. Eli's concern deepened. He had stabilized her before, but prolonged exposure during the storm was dangerous. He knew he had to reach the ship. Fast. Finally, the wreck came into view, half buried under ice, smoke curling from its damaged thrusters. Eli parked the rover close enough to access the ship's entry hatch, then jumped out, bracing himself against the violent wind. Lyra's hands gripped the seat as he worked quickly. "I'll open the hatch from here," he shouted over the roar of the storm. "Hold on." He ran to the controls and bypassed the emergency locks, finally prying open the hatch. The interior was dark and frozen, panels sparking dangerously, Lyra's glowing form moved cautiously behind him, her body shivering despite the heat from the rover. "We need to get you inside," Eli said, helping her step into the ship. Her skin glimmered faintly as she leaned on him for support. Once inside, he adjusted the internal climate controls to match her species' optimal environment, warmth and gentle airflow. She breathed in slowly, relief crossing her delicate features. "Your knowledge, it is remarkable," she said softly. "You understand what most, my people, do not." Eli only smiled. "Observation and logic, that's all. And maybe a little care." Time was critical. Eli accessed the ship's power core, which had been severely damaged during the crash. Sparks flew and panels hissed as residual energy leaked into the cabin. He worked methodically, using human improvisation and his engineering knowledge to bypass damaged circuits. Lyra hovered near the console, her glowing eyes tracking his every move. "Do not rush," she warned. "If the system overloads, it will harm both of us." "I know," Eli replied. "But we don't have a choice. We need to get this online before the storm destroys everything outside." Hours passed as the storm raged. Every time the wind slammed against the ship, the structure groaned. Ice fell from damaged panels and the temperature fluctuated violently. Lyra's body pulsed rapidly as her cycle intensified, her breathing shallow. Eli adjusted the environmental controls continuously, using every trick he knew to keep her stable. "You are incredible," Lyra said quietly. "I have never seen anyone risk themselves so completely. For another." Eli did not look up. "It's not about being incredible. It's about doing what's right. If you don't survive, none of this matters." Her gaze softened. "Your warmth, your cares, it is unlike anything humans have ever shown my kind." The storm grew stronger. Eli realized the final test was coming. He had to manually ignite the ship's engine to stabilize the power core, but that meant entering the most damaged section of the ship. Sparks flew violently and the temperature dropped dangerously. "Lyra, I'm going in," he said firmly. "Stay near the environmental controls. I cannot leave you alone," she said, concern evident in her voice. "You have to. Trust me," Eli replied, before moving into the engine chamber. Inside, the engine hummed weakly, smoke curling from exposed conduits. He reached the ignition panel and connected temporary power lines. Each connection sparked dangerously, sending bolts of electricity across the room. His gloved hands worked quickly, sweat and ice forming on his brow. Outside the chamber, Lyra monitored the internal temperature, sending pulses of warmth to keep her system stable. She whispered encouragement, her voice carrying a soft rhythm that Eli realized calmed him as much as it calmed her. A sudden surge of power hit the system, throwing Eli backward. Pain shot through his arm, but he pressed on, reconnecting the final circuit. Sparks flew and the engine roared to life, a sound so powerful it shook the entire ship. Eli staggered but remained standing. He called out to Lyra, "Engines running." "We're alive!" She rushed to his side, her glowing form flickering as she checked his condition. "You risked everything." "For me," she whispered. "No human has ever done this for an Illyrian before." Eli smiled, exhausted but relieved. "And I'd do it again. I promised you survival and I keep my promises." The ship stabilized. Lights flickered on and the temperature normalized. Lyra's breathing returned to normal, her body glowing softly in relief. She looked at Eli, gratitude and admiration shining in her eyes. The storm outside finally began to subside. Snow drifted slowly across the frozen plains, and the air inside the ship was warm and safe. Eli and Lyra sat side by side in the control cabin, both exhausted but alive. "You are not like any human I have known," Lyra said softly, her voice filled with wonder. "You see value in life, beyond race or species." Eli shrugged. "Maybe that's what being human is supposed to mean. Caring, protecting, doing what's right." She studied him for a long moment. I do not know what to call this feeling, but I am grateful. More than I can express," he smiled faintly. "Then don't, just survive." "That's enough." A quiet understanding passed between them. Two beings from entirely different worlds forced together by circumstance, learning trust, courage, and compassion. The connection went beyond words. It was a bond forged in the fire of the storm, in the risk of life and death. As night fell, the twin moons of Lithar 9 reflected off the ice fields. The storm had cleared, leaving a pristine, sparkling landscape. Inside the ship, Eli and Lyra prepared for the next stage, reaching a controlled environment where her cycle could safely complete. I never imagined humans could care so deeply, Lyra whispered. Your species may be flawed, but you are remarkable, Eli chuckled softly. Maybe, or maybe it's just me. She smiled faintly, her luminous eyes reflecting the soft light of the cabin. For the first time, she felt a strange comfort, not just physical warmth, but the reassurance that she was not alone. Not just in survival, but in trust, respect, and hope. Eli powered up the ship's navigation system. We've survived the storm. Now we finish the journey. Lyra leaned back, glowing softly. And you will stay with me. Until then, Eli smiled. Every step of the way, you're not going anywhere alone. Outside, the storm had passed, but inside the small ship, two beings, human and Illyrian, prepared to face the challenges ahead, together. And somewhere deep in the frozen valleys of Lither 9, a story of courage, trust, and unexpected friendship was only beginning to unfold. The ship hummed steadily as it soared above the frozen plains of Lithar 9. Eli Turner sat in the pilot's seat, eyes scanning the navigation console. The storm was far behind them now, leaving the horizon clear under the twin moons. Yet inside the tension lingered. Lyra's condition remained delicate. Her golden eyes, glowing softly, were fixed on the viewport. How far? Until we reach a controlled environment? She asked. Eli checked the readouts. Not far. About 6 hours. We'll reach a station capable of sustaining your cycle safely. She nodded, though her body still pulsed faintly with stress. The temporary stabilization had worked, but her cycle was far from complete. Eli had learned much about her species, how emotions, warmth, and trust influenced their biology, but he could only hope his improvisation would carry her safely through the next few hours. You've saved me twice now, she said softly. First in the storm, then in the engine room. I do not know how to repay you. Eli shook his head. No repayment needed. Helping someone survive is reward enough. She studied him, her gaze lingering. Your kind is capable of greatness beyond what my people imagined. As the ship approached the orbital station, the atmosphere shifted. Artificial gravity and environmental controls were stable, and the temperature perfectly suited for Lyra's species. Eli guided the vessel toward the docking bay, careful not to jostle the delicate alien. Almost there, he said. You're going to be safe now. The docking procedure was tense. The station's guidance system scanned the ship, ensuring stability while Eli manually controlled the final approach. Sparks of relief ran through him as the docking clamps engaged. They had made it. Once inside the station, technicians immediately assessed Lyra's condition. She was gently lifted onto a medical platform, surrounded by controlled warmth and life-sustaining equipment. Her body glowed softly as her cycle continued under safe conditions. Eli watched, standing nearby, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and relief. He had risked everything, traveled through a storm, and repaired a ship mid-crisis. But seeing her stable now made every challenge worth it. The lead Illyrian physician approached him, bowing slightly. Human, your actions saved her life. Few of your kind would have dared the risks you took. Eli nodded modestly. I did what anyone who values life would do. The physician's eyes softened. Not anyone. You have a gift. Courage and care combined. You are not ordinary among your species. Lyra stirred on the platform, her golden eyes meeting his. She reached out, placing a delicate hand near his arm. Eli, you stayed. You did not abandon me. For that, I am grateful beyond words. Eli smiled faintly. I promised. And I keep my promises. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to relax fully, trusting completely. She closed her eyes, her body stabilizing under the station's controlled environment. The rhythmic glow of her veins slowed to a calm pulse, a sign that her cycle was finally being managed safely. The hours passed quietly. Eli remained nearby, monitoring her vitals alongside the station's systems. He had learned much about her species during their time together. How biological cycles intertwined with emotional states, how survival depended on trust, and how courage could overcome fear. Lyra finally opened her eyes, focusing on him. You have shown me what humans can be. Not just survivalists, not just engineers, but guardians of life. Eli chuckled softly. I guess that's one way to put it. She smiled faintly, her golden eyes reflecting the soft glow of the medical lights. I will tell my people of you. They must know. Humans are capable of loyalty, courage, and kindness beyond imagination. Eli shook his head, humbled. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because it was right. Her eyes glimmered. Then your deeds are even more remarkable. Once her cycle completed, Lyra was strong enough to leave the medical platform. She moved with grace, but there was a new confidence in her steps. She turned to Eli, her expression soft and warm. You saved my life. Not once but twice, she said. My people will not forget your name. Eli smiled. I'm glad you survived. That's all that matters to me. She looked out the viewport at the stars. There is a tradition among my kind. A token is given to one who has shown extraordinary care and courage. Only someone we truly trust may receive it. From her cloak, she produced a small crystal shimmering softly. This is for you, Eli Turner. You have proven that life is worth protecting, and trust can be earned even across species. Keep it. Eli accepted the crystal, marveling at the delicate craftsmanship. I'll treasure it. But why me? There were others who could have helped. She smiled softly. You acted when others hesitated. You risked your life when most would flee. You saw value in me, in life itself. That is why. Days later, Eli prepared to return to Outpost 17. Lyra escorted him to the docking bay, her golden eyes reflecting both warmth and respect. You have my gratitude. And more, she said. Not only did you save my life, but you showed me the best of humanity. Eli shrugged. I just did what I could. You'd have done the same for someone in need. Lyra shook her head, smiling faintly. Perhaps. But your kind has something rare. Courage that is steady, compassion that is constant. You've changed my perspective of your people entirely. Before leaving, she placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Next season, if I must undergo this cycle again, I want you to be there. Not as a rescuer, but as someone I trust. Eli nodded, understanding the depth of her words. I'll be there, he said simply. The shuttle back to the outpost lifted off, leaving the station behind. Eli sat quietly, holding the crystal in his hand. It was more than a token. It symbolized trust, courage, and a bond that crossed the stars. Lyra's voice came over the communicator one last time. Eli, my friend, remember this. Even in the coldest, most distant places, there is warmth to be found. Sometimes it comes from unexpected beings, he smiled. I won't forget. Neither will I forget you. The shuttle sped through the void, the twin moons shrinking behind them. Eli thought of Lyra, her strength, her grace, and the trust she had placed in him. Humanity, he realized, was not just about survival. It was about courage, kindness, and the ability to rise to challenges that no one else dared face. Somewhere across the stars, an alien woman had learned that humans were capable of greatness. And somewhere in his heart, Eli Turner knew that he had been a part of something far larger than himself, a story of hope, trust, and interstellar friendship. Weeks later, Eli returned to Outpost 17, resuming his work on the towers. Yet, each time the wind howled across the frozen plains, he thought of Lyra, her golden eyes and the glow of her being. He knew this was not the end. One quiet evening, as he monitored the sensors, a familiar signal appeared on the screen. A delicate, steady voice spoke through the static. Eli, next season, I will need you again. He smiled faintly, placing the crystal on the console. I'll be ready, he said softly. The stars outside shone brightly, a reminder that courage, kindness, and humanity could transcend even the vast distances of space. And somewhere far from Earth, a bond had formed, one that would endure, grow, and remind two species that life, in all its forms, was worth protecting. Eli looked out at the frozen horizon, feeling warmth in his chest. Lyra had called for help once, and in the act of saving her, he had discovered something extraordinary, the true power of humanity. And in the quiet hum of the outpost, he realized that this was only the beginning of a story that spanned the stars.